welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name's Matt, and today I'm going to be covering the Best Documentary Feature category at the upcoming Oscars. The Oscars are still 7 months away. We're not even in the season yet. The fall festivals have not happened. And I'm here predicting the documentary category of all things, which is historically known as one of the hardest categories to predict, and a category that even on the night of the awards, a lot of people still have not seen the nominees. But I'm here to say, actually, I think that this is one of the easiest to get a sense of what's in the running for the awards. While it is one of the most difficult to actually predict the final lineup because this branch is known for throwing curveballs, all of the documentaries that are nominated are films that have been floating around since January, February. Most of the nominees every year premiere at the Sundance Film Festival, and if not Sundance, Cannes or TIFF in Venice. So we know all of the films that are in this field at this point. All of the information about this coming year's nominees, it's out there in the world if you go and look for it. It might just be a little bit of a challenge to pinpoint exactly which ones they'll be, but that's exactly what I'm going to try to do today. The thing that's difficult about this category is when it comes to the end of year awards, the things that critics often tend to award are not the same things that the Academy tends to award. So a lot of the precursors that we see are completely useless. And that's why this is a hard category to predict. The branch that nominates for the Oscars is so different in their taste than any other awards body. That's why very frequently we can be led astray thinking that something is the front runner and then just having it be completely left out at the end of the day. Frankly, I think that's because we're often not thinking enough about what the documentary branch of the Academy, what they really like and what speaks to them. And instead, we're just going with what seems like the biggest documentaries of the year. So with that said, what does this category like? Well, I broke down the last 10 years of nominated films, so 50 films, and of those 50 films, 38 out of 50 could be described as being issue docs. Generally, what we can see in a lot of the documentaries that the Academy loves and nominates are David versus Goliath stories, films about small people facing big systems. It seems like a lot of what the Academy really loves are in the moment, on the ground capturing of these types of politically charged stories. Again, 38 out of 50 are issue films, and so that's what we really want to be looking at here today. And the other thing worth noting is that in the last 10 years, only 5 out of 50, yes, 5 out of 50 nominees were from directors that had previously been nominated for the award. That is a 10% chance of being nominated again if you have previously been nominated in the Best Documentary category. And that's really worth noting because a lot of the time, the snubs that we talk about as the big shocking surprises are films that are directed by someone who has previously been nominated or won this prize. So we have to really keep that in consideration because a lot of this year's big documentary contenders are from people who have been nominated in the past or have won before. So with all that being said, let's jump right into my top 5. Starting off at number 1, I have The Perfect Neighbor. This is a Netflix film. They purchased this out of Sundance for $5 million, which shows a lot of confidence in a documentary film. The Perfect Neighbor premiered to rave reviews at Sundance. Currently has an 87 out of 100 on Metacritic, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Clearly one of the most praised and acclaimed documentary films of the year. This is about Florida's stand your ground laws, specifically in the case of the killing of a G.K. Owens by her neighbor. It's all captured through body cam footage, which sort of detail the lead up to this killing and everything that came afterwards. The film goes into racial violence and gun violence in America as a whole. A very topical film. Now, it's really hard to say right out of the gate that something is the front runner in the category because that can so so quickly change. Especially, I haven't seen the film yet. This is one of the ones that I haven't been able to see. They're also not doing any festivals post Sundance. They skipped Toronto's Hot Docs Festival. They skipped TIFF. So it really has no presence whatsoever, which makes it a little bit concerning. I would have loved to see them push this a little bit more. I don't know what's going on there. We don't have a release date for this one. Hopefully it gets a good release date, but it's hard again to predict this as a frontrunner when last year I was sitting here at the exact same time saying Daughters is the undisputed frontrunner because Netflix bought it for a crazy amount of money and it went huge at Sundance, and then Netflix completely screwed up the award strategy of that movie. So it's really difficult to say undisputedly this is number one because it could very, very well just not end up there in the end of the day. But still, at this point, it has everything it needs to eventually be an Oscar winner. It just comes down to, does Netflix do what they need to with the film, or do they put that muscle somewhere else? The second place film in this category is a bit of a surprise to me from even just a few hours ago, but that is Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk. This is a film about a Palestinian photojournalist, Fatima Husuna, who lived in Gaza during the ongoing attacks, but just died this May, only 2 days after the film was selected to play at the Cannes Film Festival. And after that happened, the film had just a wave of support around it at Cannes. It went from being a film that was screening in the least popular program to one of the most talked about films of the festival. And while I didn't get a chance to see it at the festival, it's been one that clearly made a mark on the festival circuit. It's now playing at TIFF and will likely be a presence at many other festivals across the fall. And if we're looking for a representative to talk about the Palestinian cause at this year's Oscars, just like last year we had No Other Land, I think Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk is probably the best representation that we have right now of a film about Gaza and about the ongoing genocide in Palestine. Not only does this have a great narrative around it that will get it a lot of publicity, but this also has the reviews to back it up. This has been raved out of Cannes. It's been raved going into TIFF. Kino Lorber has this one distributing, and they were nominated just last year for soundtrack to a coup d'etat. It's also done in a really unique way, which is that the filmmaker does not live in Gaza and had to record the entire film via video chat. All of her calls with Fatima are recorded over FaceTime, over Zoom, and we get a look at Gaza through the eyes of Fatima as well as through the eyes of an outsider who is unable to do anything and is forced to watch in horror from exile. Last year, I was a little bit concerned that the Academy would not be progressive enough to be open to a film about Palestine, but evidently that's not the case because No Other Land did win the Oscar last year, and I think it's very possible we could get a second in a row winning, the same way that we had 2 films about Russia-Ukraine winning in a row. We could get 2 Palestinian documentaries winning back-to-back, and Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk could walk away our prize winner this year. At number 3, Apocalypse in the Tropics. This is another Netflix movie, and of my top 5, this is the one representative that I have who has been nominated before. This film is directed by Petra Costa, a Brazilian filmmaker previously nominated for The Edge of Democracy, another Netflix film, and Apocalypse in the Tropics is basically the sequel to that film. While The Edge of Democracy was about the struggle between the left and right politically in Brazil and sort of the lead up to Jair Bolsonaro's campaign and the incarceration of the current president of Brazil, Lula, Apocalypse in the Tropics is more of a film about the conditions that led Brazil to where it is today politically, specifically looking at religion and evangelism, specifically a very American breed of evangelism, which has been a cancer within politics for the last 20 years. The film is honestly shocking in how it sort of draws parallels between what has been happening in Brazil and what's currently happening in the United States, with these mega pastors and televangelists having the same type of power and sway over Brazilians that many televangelists and right-wing Christian nationalist thinkers have over Americans. It's a brilliant film. I believe it's on Netflix now. If it's not, it should be in the next few days or weeks or so, but it's one of my favorite movies of the year. Brilliant documentary. I think it's a step up from Edge of Democracy in every way, which I think is what you need to get another nomination if you have previously been nominated in this category. You need to clearly have stepped up your game and not sort of lingered on the same subject matter. And this one is an evolution in every way from The Edge of Democracy. So that's why I feel pretty good about this getting in. And of the two Netflix movies here, I actually kind of think Apocalypse in the Tropics might have the leg up, just because we know Netflix has pushed the hell out of this to festivals, yet we're still kind of waiting to see what they do about The Perfect Neighbor. So I feel great about Apocalypse in the Tropics being here. I don't think it's a winner, though. At number 4, I have Mr. Nobody against Putin. And I'm a little bit torn about this one because of the films representing the Ukrainian conflict and sort of talking about Russia and Ukraine. I don't think this is the strongest one that we have this year, and yet I do kind of think that this is the most likely one to get a nomination, simply because the other one is directed by the guy that did 20 Days in Mariupol, which is such a giant in this category that I don't know if we can get a repeat nomination for him. So I'm going with Mr. Nobody against Putin instead, because I do believe that every year until the conflict is over, we will be getting a film that has to do with Russia or Russian politics or Ukraine's struggle for freedom. So right now, my pick to represent that is Mr. Nobody against Putin, which is about a school teacher secretly filming the propaganda routines that are being taught in school to Russian students, showing that education is the front line of the propaganda war. It's a North Korea-esque portrayal of modern Russia's education system. Now, the film didn't really hit me the way that I hoped it would. It didn't leave me with that oomph that I felt at the end of Navalny or 20 Days in Mariupol or even Porcelain War, to be honest. But there is one other I will just mention all the way down at my number 20 spot. I do have A Simple Soldier, which is a TIFF premiering film about Ukraine. This is a first-person POV documentary. This Ukrainian cinematographer normally works in fiction film. He, now fighting in the front lines in Ukraine, decided to make a documentary entirely from his perspective, the camera with him the entire time, about his experience on the front lines. We don't have reviews for this one. We don't know if this is releasing this year, whereas we do have confirmation about 2,000 Meters in Andrivka, which is already released, and Mr. Nobody against Putin, which should be releasing very, very soon. And so I do have A Simple Soldier lower down just because after its TIFF premiere, you never know, it could come out next year. But that is another Ukraine documentary that could fill this spot that I think is guaranteed for one of these three movies. Rounding out the top 5, I have The Encampments. This is another film about the Palestinian conflict, but this one takes place in the United States, specifically takes place on college campuses, as this looks at the very controversial college protests that happened just a couple years ago. This film mostly takes place at Columbia and looks at some of the protesters and activists on campus who really spearheaded this movement that spread all across America and across the world in terms of college kids standing up, showing their solidarity for Gaza. The film has amazing reviews outside of IMDb, where the film has been review bombed by angry conservatives. But the same way that a few years ago we had multiple Ukraine documentaries, I think this year, as it seems like the popular opinion has now become that this is a genocide and that this is something that we need to be talking about, maybe the Overton window has shifted a little bit in terms of how people feel about what's happening in Palestine. Very, very likely that we could get 2 films about Palestine in the documentary lineup this year, especially because the documentary branch of the Academy is the most politically left branch of any of them. This is a branch that basically is founded on people who speak up for what's right, people who shine a light on corruption, people who are always at the front edge of progress. Usually documentaries can lead us to political change, and so documentary filmmakers, it makes sense, are very, very likely the most progressive group within the Academy Awards. And that's why I have 2 films about Palestine in here, although if one of them had to be dropped, I think it would be The Encampments. So that is my top 5, 4 out of 5 from first-time nominees, and 2 of these are Netflix movies, which maybe one's gotta go. But moving on to the rest of my list, number 6 currently is Come See Me in the Good Light. This won the Festival Favorite Award at the Sundance Film Festival, which previously was won by Navalny, and last year Daughters, which was one of the big snubs of the documentary category last year. Come See Me in the Good Light is about the poet Andrea Gibson and their battle with ovarian cancer, which just took their life about 2 weeks ago as of recording this. So very, very prominent poet, partially responsible for the popularization of slam poetry. Come See Me in the Good Light, though, is not a film about death. It's a film about life, and a film about enjoying those moments, finding the poetry in the darkness. It's a film that won the Audience Award, not just at Sundance, I believe it also won the Audience Award at Hot Docs. And it's clear to see why. It's a very funny, crowd-pleasing film that also delivers on the tearjerker side. Apple TV Plus is handling this one and releasing it in the fall, and they have a big song attached to it that they are going to be campaigning very, very hard for Academy attention. The song is called Salt Then Sour Then Sweet, and it's written and performed by Sarah Bareilles, Brandi Carlile, and of course the late Andrea Gibson. If I had to put money on it right now, I would bet that this is the critic frontrunner of the year. This is the film that wins the Critics' Choice Awards, that just cleans up at regional awards, picking up almost every nomination. And then at the end of the day, does it make the Oscars? I don't know. It's not necessarily the type of film that always does make the Oscars. In a way, a film about Andrea Gibson is kind of a celebrity doc, which does not often make it in. Also, this premiered in the Sundance Premieres category, which is an out-of-competition lineup at Sundance. And the last time that something in that lineup was nominated in Best Documentary was in 2018 with RBG. Normally, if Sundance documentaries are nominated, they are from the competitive categories, not the out-of-competition. So that is a knock against this, but it could just be too big to fail. And if it does get nominated, I think that this is almost sure to win. It is crowd-pleasing in a way that I think the larger Academy will love. I'm just not so sure that the documentary branch, who are the sole branch that votes on nominations, I don't know if they're going to love it the way that the broader Academy does. I think that this is going to be the biggest documentary of the year. It just might not extend to the Academy Awards. Then, as previously mentioned, 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, which is the follow-up to 20 Days in Mariupol, and versus 20 Days in Mariupol, which was about the invasion of Mariupol through the eyes of a journalist who is on the ground as it happened. This one is a more in-the-action look at the war, as it follows soldiers during an offensive as they pushed through 2 kilometers of forest to get to the city of Andrivka. Like I mentioned before, I think a Ukrainian documentary is going to be nominated every year, whether it's about Ukraine or about Russia or just something that reminds people that this conflict is ongoing. Whether that will be the follow-up film from the guy who just won the Oscar, I don't know, especially because I think that this is unanimously seen and agreed upon as a little bit weaker than 20 Days in Mariupol. It's not quite as hard-hitting. Mostly, I think, because 20 Days in Mariupol kind of leaves you with a feeling of, holy shit, whoa, this is devastating. Whereas 2,000 Meters to Andrivka kind of wants to leave you with a sense of hope, kind of wants to leave you with a sense of heroism. It's definitely the type of film that's, celebrating our boys in the front line. It definitely succeeds, but it takes away some of the emotional impact that 20 Days in Mariupol had. So I really want to have, this feels like it should be in the top 5. But with that stat before, like I said, previous winners, previous nominees have a hard time getting nominated again. I don't know if they're going to go for Mstislav Chernov. this close after he just won the Oscar for 20 Days in Mariupol. I'm going to leave this out for now. And speaking of a former winner who has returned with another film this year, we have Cover Up, the new Laura Poitras film. Laura Poitras, of course, won the Oscar for Citizen4, the Edward Snowden film, and then was just nominated for All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. While her films are usually very in-the-moment profiles of whistleblowers and people who stand up against corruption or expose what's going on in the world, this one is not a profile in the same way. It follows the journalist Seymour Hersh, who won the Pulitzer Prize in the 1970s for his work exposing the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. So this is an archival documentary versus what Laura Poitras normally does, which is she gets right there with people as they expose things. You know, she was right there beside Edward Snowden as he leaked the NSA files. She was right there with Nan Goldin during All the Beauty and the Bloodshed as she stood up against the Sackler family and took on Big Pharma. This one, unlike those movies, takes a bit more of an editing room perspective because it's going through this old footage of Seymour Hersh and talking about what he did rather than being there with him as he does it. This hasn't premiered yet, so we don't have reviews on this one, but it will be playing all 4 major fall festivals, being Venice, TIFF, Telluride, and the New York Film Festival, which is definitely speaking to its quality. But this just doesn't feel as much like the type of immediate film that needs a nomination, especially from someone who has been nominated in this category 3 times and has won once. Number 9 is The Librarians. This is the new film by Kim A. Snyder, who was just nominated in the short documentary category last year for Death by Numbers. This one got great reviews coming out of Sundance, and it's all about book banning in the United States. If we're looking for more films about US politics, if we're looking for things that are about censorship and about the march into fascism, this is probably one of the biggest films to look at. But just like I mentioned with Come See Me in the Good Light, this premiered out of competition in Sundance, and the track record for out of competition Sundance films getting nominated is very, very bad. Number 10, I have The Last Republican, which kind of jumps right off of The Librarians, being a film about the current political moment. This is a comedic documentary from director Steve Pink, most known for Hot Tub Time Machine. It's all about Representative Adam Kinzinger, a Republican from Illinois who very famously stood up against Trump. This one premiered at TIFF last year and quietly released in theaters in January. It will be eligible this year for the Academy Awards, and I do think that a comedy sort of touching on fighting across political lines for the good of the country could really speak to voters. But at the moment, I just don't know if there's going to be enough of a push behind this film or enough visibility for this to get in at the end of the day. But it does absolutely sound like the type of movie that the Academy would go nuts for. Now I'm going to talk about 3 in succession, my number 11, 13, and 15 spots, which I title my celebrity documentaries, aka the films that year after year show up in critic prizes and never at the Oscars. Those being Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore, John Candy, I Like Me, and It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley. I have Marlee Matlin at 11 because not only is Marlee Matlin a beloved figure within the Academy, being the first deaf or hard of hearing performer to win an Academy Award, and being a major part of the campaign of CODA and the reason why CODA was such a hit with the Academy Awards. But also of the 3 celebrities here, she is the only one who is still alive and working and will likely be campaigning alongside this film in the fall. Also, I gotta say, while I don't usually love these celebrity documentaries, I watch something like Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, or Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, and I go, God, what the hell are these critics seeing in this? I mean, it's good, but like, best documentary of the year? So it's pretty rare for me to watch a movie like this and be so blown away as I was with Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore. And I think the reason for that is that I've never seen a movie about deafness that is so centered on deaf people. Or maybe I should rephrase that as, I've never seen a movie about deafness that was made specifically for and by deaf people. Films like CODA have been criticized within the deaf community for using deafness as a prop within the story, which is ultimately made for hearing people. The thing that Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore does that's really interesting is all of the interviews are signed, completely silent and subtitled. If the interview is with someone who is hearing, the hearing person sits across from an interviewer who signs, has it translated into their ear, and then they speak the answer back to us. The signing is never voiceovered. We never hear what is being signed. Voice is never given to someone who does not speak or does not hear. And it's really cool how this movie uses Marlee Matlin's story as a vehicle to make a film that is so much for the deaf community rather than just about it. And I'll quickly segue to my number 14 here, which is Deaf President Now. This got great reviews out of Sundance, and personally, I actually would counter Marlee Matlin with this, because this is a film about deaf people that is not for deaf people at all. This is the very typical approach to deafness that we see time and time again in films, where it's about the sound design and everything that's signed is voiced over. Watching Deaf President Now and Marlee Matlin side by side sort of shows that one is really doing a service to the community that it's about, and one is just sort of about them as a prop for the story. Apple TV Plus also has this one, but I think that this is going to be kind of buried underneath Come See Me in the Good Light in terms of their documentary push. But the audience does love this one. It has extremely high reviews, scores, specifically on Letterboxd. Letterboxd loves this movie, so my problems with it are clearly not really represented elsewhere. I don't think this one will be a nominee, but I can see it get on the short list. Okay, back to those celebrity documentaries. Number 13 is John Candy, I Like Me. This is the TIFF opening night film directed by Colin Hanks. It's got star-studded interviews. It's about the life of comedian John Candy. And because of that star power, this is sure to get some critics' love, because critics, they do love their star power in documentaries. Again, I don't fully know why. I think this is going to be a contender for the most okay film of the year. I'm gonna go, yeah, that was a movie. That was a movie. I learned about John Candy. Awesome. But that said, it is still worth having on this list because critics will go gaga for it, as they do with any celebrity documentary. Same for It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, which is about the musician who died very young and has the voice of an angel. This is an archival footage documentary currently in theaters and getting rave reviews at the moment. But again, it's a celebrity documentary. Those don't really go anywhere in terms of the Academy Awards. It's shortlist or it's bust. Now jumping back up to number 12, The Eyes of Ghana. This is playing at TIFF this year, and it's coming from two-time Oscar winner Ben Proudfoot, who won the Oscar for Best Short Documentary for The Queen of Basketball and for The Last Repair Shop. And The Eyes of Ghana is all about a political documentarian, Chris Sui Hesse, who is from Ghana and now in his 90s has basically captured 60 years worth of a country, as he's been there through multiple political movements, plenty of turmoil within the country, and he's captured it all on film, and now is ready to pass on the torch of The Eyes of Ghana to the new upcoming generation. Ben Proudfoot is someone you gotta mention here. I mean, he pulled off the impossible and won Best Short Documentary 2 times, despite the fact that Best Short Documentary is just as gatekeepy as feature documentary is in terms of winners not really doing it multiple times. So Ben Proudfoot is kind of like a titan when it comes to the Oscars. He kind of pulled off a miracle. The thing that I worry about with The Eyes of Ghana is that Ben Proudfoot's style can be categorized as very slick, very polished, very studio. His films have this sort of sheen to them that doesn't feel very real to it. He's capturing something that is very set up. And I don't know how that's going to work in a film that profiles someone like Chris Sui Hesse, whose entire career was just him capturing things in the moment, run and gun, as it happened. That's kind of the antithesis of Ben Proudfoot's style, so I don't necessarily know if he's the right filmmaker to make this movie, but regardless, he is Ben Proudfoot and he is worth listing in the top 15 for this award. After that, number 16, we have Predators. This premiered at Sundance this year. It is the To Catch a Predator documentary, which goes into the TV show and its legacy and sort of the potentially harmful legacy of vigilante justice that has come out of this show. MTV Docs is going to be releasing this film, and they have been incredibly successful in getting documentaries nominations nominations in the past. So they could be successful this year getting another one in, and really it seems like all they have this year is Predators. Then at number 17, one of the most shockingly interesting films of the year, premiering at TIFF, is Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, which is a Elvis Presley archival footage concert documentary directed by Baz Luhrmann. And I don't know what a Baz Luhrmann concert doc is going to look like, but it's going to be fascinating. And normally I would never have a concert documentary here, but this being archival and being cut together by a filmmaker like Baz Luhrmann makes it feel far more like something like Summer of Soul by Questlove than, for example, Madonna, Truth or Dare, or Justin Bieber, Never Say Never. I don't think this one has a strong shot of happening, but Baz Luhrmann being behind this gives me something interesting to grab onto that could potentially push this to being nomination worthy. Number 18, I have Cutting Through Rocks. This was the winner of the Grand Jury Prize in the World Documentary category at Sundance this year, and it follows the race for the mayoral position following the first woman to ever successfully run for office in Iran. The film speaks to feminism within the Middle East, specifically Iran's current movement, which is that women are sort of taking back power, taking back freedom. This film could really speak to voters because of that. Ultimately, I found this one kind of kept me too much at an arm's length for me to really love it, and I kind of feel like it might do the same to the Academy, so I don't know about this one. That's why I've got a little bit lower down my list. Number 19 is Orwell 2 + 2 = 5. This one premiered at Cannes, played TIFF. It's from Raoul Peck, previously nominated for the James Baldwin film in 2016. This is a profile of George Orwell's writing and sort of cross-referencing between George Orwell and the things that he predicted coming true nowadays, looking at our world through an Orwellian lens of post-truth in a digital era. Arno, who saw it at Cannes, said that while it was a little bit manipulative, it's definitely the type of thing that audiences will connect with and that his audience did connect with there. But the same could have been said for Raoul Peck's last film, Ernest Cole Lost and Found, last year, which did not end up getting a nomination at the end of the day. And I don't think Orwell 2 + 2 = 5 will either. Werner Herzog has a new film with ghost elephants. This seems to be a nature documentary following a herd of ghost elephants. I don't know what a ghost elephant is, but it's a mysterious herd in the jungles of Angola. This one's premiering at Venice, and it seems like it might be a little bit more of a step back approach for Werner Herzog. The Tale of Cillian is playing at TIFF and Venice. This is the follow-up film from one of the directors of Honeyland. This is about a farmer and his friendship with a white stork, sort of cross-cutting between this farmer and his real friendship with stork and traditional Macedonian folk tales about a boy who runs away from home and turns into a stork. And so it's sort of bringing a magical realism angle to a very realist story about a farmer in modern day Macedonia. And it sounds really interesting, sounds really beautiful. Sign me up for anything from the directors of Honeyland. That was one of the most beautiful documentaries I've seen in ages. But again, it's a previous nominee, and I'm not seeing enough right now for me to justify putting this in the category, but I think it's worth mentioning on the periphery. At number 23, Antidote. And if our Russia-Ukraine nominee is not A Simple Soldier or 2,000 Meters to Andrivka or Mr. Nobody Against Putin, it could be Antidote, which is a film about 3 whistleblowers who faced very grave consequences when trying to blow the whistle against Vladimir Putin. This premiered at Tribeca last year and very quietly released in the United States in May this year. The quietness of its release is why I'm putting it lower in my category here. Number 24 is Below the Clouds. This is Gianfranco Rossi's new film, which is premiering in competition at Venice, and it's all about the people that live at the base of Mount Vesuvius, which famously destroyed Pompeii. All of his films sort of follow the plight of people escaping from war, and it seems like Below the Clouds is going to be quite similar, telling the story of refugees in the community at the base of Mount Vesuvius, as well as the Italians that live there. His films are very artful and very stoic, usually taking a bit of an observational approach to what's going on. They don't make a lot of commentary. They sort of just let the camera run and show you what it will. Even if this gets great reviews, I think it might end up being a little bit too artsy and indirect to get a nomination. Number 25 is Imago. This is this year's Cannes Best Documentary winner. This is another art documentary, a very, very artsy film, which is all about someone who inherits land on the border between Georgia and Chechnya. And another very artsy documentary that probably has no chance is Afternoons of Solitude. Afternoons of Solitude is the new Albert Serra film. This is a film all about bullfighting, which is apparently very graphic in its depiction of the fights. A lot of people have boycotted the film or complained about it being too graphic in its brutality against animals. But the film continues to get some of the best reviews of the year. It's really, really hard to predict a film as artsy as this, though. Same way it is for Below the Clouds or Imago. And I suppose when talking about artsy documentaries that I don't really see as being major contenders, Seeds, this year's Grand Jury Prize winner at Sundance in the US documentary category. This is a film about farmers in the South on inherited land. It's a very slow-moving film. It's very artsy. It sort of keeps you at a distance. It's observational. It does not make any commentary on what's going on screen. It doesn't feel like the type of movie that the Academy often goes for. And so that's kind of why I'm keeping Seeds this far down, despite it being so high up on Awards Expert. And so that finishes us off with this year's documentary category overview. Let me know if you think I've missed any major films that you could see an angle for getting nominated. And coming up very soon on the channel, I'm going to be doing a TIFF lineup video talking about all of the films that show up at that festival. I'm going to be doing a New York Film Festival lineup review, talking about all of the films going to that festival as well. So lots coming ahead, so make sure you stay tuned. As always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.